online on YouTube. It has a little delay.
Yeah, a little bit of lag.
Yeah, it's live now.
Hey, hello.
It's not on, it's on YouTube now.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, great. We're live. Good evening, guys.
Hello.
How's it going?
First of all, it's a little strange to be speaking English, but things asked for. So tonight we are going to chat with the amazing guys from Foundation Group, John Park, Daniel Park, and Matthew Zikry. I'm really honored to have you guys on this show. I've been a huge fan of John's work for quite a long time now, and I got to know you guys' work in some time ago through Foundation Group, and found it awesome too. So it's really an honor to have you guys here and to be able to chat with you and to learn a little bit.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Luis. This is an amazing opportunity to talk with other artists in different parts of the world. So thanks for setting this up, man.
Thank you. I can't thank you guys enough to chatting with us. As I was saying outside of the stream, Brazil has quite a need to get to know this kind of stuff and to get involved with design thinking and foundation. And it's great to hear from you guys and you guys' experience and what you're trying to achieve through the Foundation Group and through brainstorm and all other activities you do.
Awesome.
As we said, I think it would be nice to start things at the beginning and learn a little bit about you guys' background. I know John and Daniel went to Art Center, and Art Center is a huge go-to school for this kind of stuff. I don't know if everybody here knows Art Center, but I think a lot of them know. So it would be nice if you guys could explain a little bit what it was to go to Art Center and what it meant to you to learning the foundations and stuff.
Yeah, I'll hand the baton off to Daniel because he's my older brother and he inspired me to go to Art Center. So go for it, big bro.
Yeah. Hi everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us. So yeah, I actually teach at Art Center as well, just one day a week, just to give back. And Art Center was, I went to Art Center, I started in 2002, and I went for product design, and I graduated in 2006, winter time. Back then, I was into product designing, but I was really into doing stylizing. Like, I was really into beautiful products, and they didn't actually have a entertainment program there.
Mm-hmm.
So the companies that I wanted to work for were very kind of stylish kind of companies. I did an internship at BMW, and I got my first job at Oakley, and I was really attracted to Oakley being a very kind of entertainment esque, kind of very stylized product company from earlier on. So I really like the idea of product design going into kind of mixing with entertainment design, and that was kind of the beginning for me. But education-wise, Art Center was really, for me, I found out a lot of information there. That was probably the most important for me. I didn't have no one told me what to do, like how to go about getting your education. And the internet back then, it wasn't as like it was today. You can't get information like back then like you can today. You can, download Gumroad tutorials, and you have all these great online courses. But back then, you had to really pay a high dollar fee to get that information, and that's what was kind of Art Center provided. Um, Initially. And another thing that was Art Center was really important from my experience was um, learning how to be, we call it grit. So it's kind of learning how to push through and um, achieve these high goals. And that's one common thing that you find with people graduating from Art Center is that they're very driven people, right? If you're able to survive at Art Center with high grades, not low grades, with high grades, and the the very idea of having this drive was the greatest skill set. It was more important than being a good designer or being very intelligent or anything. It was just a sheer hard-working factor. It was, everyone there, or at least the people that were hardworking. We would stay up all night. We would have conversations about design and life. 2 a.m. And I felt like that was the biggest important. That was the greatest value I got from Art Center. And even to this day, even with like schools like Brainstorm, I feel like the success ratio is much higher with students that are having these discussions at home with their friends. If they're staying up all night together, and this kind of community was really important. And once you have that community, it really kind of raised your percentage of success to get to your goal, to get to your first job, to really just kind of build upon something. So that was really important, and I feel like what we're doing now with kind of Patreon Foundation is really supplying that information out there. But what's interesting is like people are creating their own communities, and through their communities they're pushing each other, they're supporting each other, and it's really amazing. It's amazing how far everything's come, and what Art Center supplied for us. But now it's kind of become something else, and I'm really kind of excited to see being interviewed by Atelier, and how you guys want to also kind of give that information out to a community where you guys don't have that sort of school.
Yeah.
You guys, but the value in what you guys are doing as a group, you guys are creating your own society, your own beliefs, and there's a great value in that, and there's a lot of strength, and however we can kind of be a part of the discussion is also our value. We don't have value unless we have people that are willing to listen, that are willing to share in this sort of journey. So that was the greatest value for me. And yeah, I'll hand it off to my brother John. And what were your experiences?
No, that's a really great way of putting it, because at the end of the day, I mean, education is just information, right? That's being passed from one person to another, whether it's your instructors or your friends. But the biggest value is, as you mentioned, is the community, and I think that's kind of part of what we want to create, whether it's through the internet or whether it's through Patreon Foundation or other platforms. But I guess I can talk a little bit about how I got into art and what drove me to this point in life. I was always interested in art, and having growing up in a kind of art inspired family. My older brother Daniel being an artist, my father, who's also used art to kind of design interiors and do architectural things for construction sites and cathedrals and things like that. There was always like a creative. There was something creative in the household, and it definitely translated over or transferred over to me. But I didn't know what I wanted to do growing up. I knew that I loved cartoons, and that was one of the things. I was like, oh man, I love The Simpsons. It's so fun. And I was like, but I hate animating. I mean, who wants to draw like 700 pictures just to make a character smile? You know, like I was like, this sucks. You know, but that was my concept of like, is this what it takes to become an artist in this field? I was like, man, this is horrible, man. This sucks. And my brother, when he went to art center, I was like, what is that? That sounds like intense, you know. And I was in high school. I was about 15 years old at the time, and he gave me a pamphlet and he said, here, you should check this out. Actually, as a matter of fact, I encourage you to take a summer class there. You know, stop messing around and doing dumb shit with your life. You know, go do something productive. And so, one summer I went and I met all these people that were my age that loved art, and that was cool. To me, that was the start of understanding or knowing the importance of a community, right? Because all my friends who were really good at math, really good at English and science, I mean, they were all about becoming doctors, or getting into banking or like very conventional jobs, things that I was not interested in knowing, and I sucked in school, so I was like, there's no way I can do this. But I found my own people, and I feel that there's kind of like a community building. At the moment I experienced it, I was like, oh my gosh, they understand me and I understand them. This is so cool. And I eventually went into the Art Center College of Design in 2006, and I attended the school for about 2.5, 3 years before I dropped out, and I started working full time. But during my time there, I studied. I went the route that my brother went, which was product design, and I learned a lot of core fundamental things, which is about designing. Now, to someone who doesn't know what design is, it sounds like a fancy term, right? To me, I thought it was like fashion design. You're like, I'm a designer. You're like, oh man, you must design some cool shoes, man, or something, I was like, oh my god, you're so fancy. But design was actually a term that was used to express one's idea, and to me that was like an eye-opener, a very revolutionary kind of terminology. I was like, oh shit, that's what design is. And design can be expressed in many ways, like, from your clothing to like computers, and even down to like the games that we play on our free time. And that's when I was like, oh my god, this is cool. I definitely want to learn more about this. So as I continue my education, I learned a lot about what made good design, and why design was important versus just understanding good technique. And Art Center is a very technique-driven school. They make you draw circles and ellipses, and they make you master perspective. Like Scott Robertson was my instructor the first year, and he would make you draw circles for like one whole year, until you can draw a perfect circle. I was like, oh my god. But in conjunction, they wanted to train you so that you're so good at drawing, you're so good at the application to visually communicate your ideas, that you can focus purely on your ideas, right? And that's kind of where the education shift started happening for me. Was I was like, oh man, this is very valuable, because when I started, I was like, I just want to be awesome at drawing and painting, And then when you get awesome at drawing and painting, your ideas aren't as awesome. They're just kind of, your drawings are awesome, but your ideas are kind of boring and lame and generic. And and you wonder, you ask yourself, hey, how did those other guys, how did they do both? How did they draw, paint, and come up with cool ideas? And that's where the concept of designing and foundation mixed together was really a core element. So fast forward, we go down into like 2015. A Patreon. I discovered Patreon through a friend, and I was talking with Matt and Daniel, and we wanted to do something that was just really affordable. There's all this stuff on Gumroad, and there's so much cool stuff on Gumroad, man. All this technique, and there's guys teaching like secrets and techniques and things that that took them years to learn, and they're releasing it out to the public, which is amazing. But there was always something missing, which was just the basic principles of design, the basic principles of foundation, and I felt that was something that I wanted to kind of, if I can give anything or share anything, I wanted to share that with the new generation of artists, because I found that to be one of the most impactful things. But yeah, that's my perspective in terms of how community led to, exposure to like all these important classes, and why we're doing this thing. But yeah, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Matt.
Great.
Hey guys, so yeah, my name is Matthew Zikry, and I'm actually kind of a latecomer. I didn't really discover art. I never really was drawing or painting until I was about 17 years old, and I was just a big geek at the time. I was playing a lot of Warcraft, a lot of Diablo, and luckily on the forums, I met a friend of mine, Timothy Rodriguez, who introduced me to a speed painting DVD from Gnomon by David Levy. And I always knew I loved games. I thought the only way to make games for a living would be to do this programming thing, game design. And after discovering this, I was like, oh my god, I can draw and paint for a living? So totally just flipped, career goals then, wanted to become an artist. And that's when I started, I bought a tablet, tried doing these speed paintings where I just kept failing at, but at the time I was like, oh my god, I can do it! I can totally become an artist. So I started researching a little bit, and unlike the route going to art center, it was a brand new career path for me. I wasn't ready to spend 100, 200,000 in loans for this thing I just discovered months before. So I went to a community college called Moore Park College, and just got a normal associate's degree from there, specialized in illustration. And then after Moore Park, I went to Cal State Long Beach University doing illustration. And I thought it was going to be this amazing experience, but because I never drew before, they kind of expected us to know the foundations a little bit. And I just fell right on my face. Like, it wasn't a concept art school. A lot of the instructors were very editorial based. So they would give us an assignment, give us a month and a half to complete it, and that was it for one illustration. So I never really got to learn perspective, anatomy, or any of that things. And that was kind of a blessing in its own, because that led me to start trying to discover my own path and where can I seek this education from. And that's when I found Red Engine School, and that's where I met John, I met Daniel there. And really, it was just a matter of how can I obtain this education without spending that much money on it as far as going to Art Center. So I started buying every book I could. I got all the DVDs I could. I have like literally a whole shelf only on perspective because I failed that bad at it. I really had to figure out, learn this subject. And luckily over time, through Red Engine, CGMA, Concept Design Academy, as well as Brainstorm, I've just been slowly obtaining all this knowledge that these masters have been giving us. And basically that would cover my educational experience. And for the past like 5 years or so now, I've been working within these school systems, because I've actually worked at Red Engine and CGMA and all that, but I wasn't instructing. So that really helped me gain additional insight on all these additional classes that we're teaching, and almost through osmosis, I was able to obtain this knowledge I was seeking.
Great. That's great. That's great.
Thanks.
One thing that I was thinking here is that John said that he basically studied design and drawing and painting before going to design and starting to learn all this new world that's out there about ideas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that gets me thinking, what would you think would be the right path to go about considering the foundation patron? Because you guys have drawing, digital, and design. And do you think there's an order for a newcomer that's getting to know foundation group now? And how would he go about in learning this stuff all together? Or would he basically look for do everything, or get some stages and go one step at a time, or something like that? Do you think there's something like that?
I mean, a lot of the classes that we offer is it's not perfectly structured, meaning, you know, there's a 1, 2, 3 ABC kind of organization. The way I see it is it's very a la carte, you know, where the students can pick and choose. But the I guess the if I were a student and I came across Foundation Patreon, the thing that I would want out of it, or I think would be the best beneficial, is learn what you want and learn it at the pace in which you're comfortable with. Because I find that to be a stepping stone to learning the next big thing, right? Whether that's something more a more complicated technique, a very advanced, you know, principle, whether it's illustration or design, and then eventually getting comfortable to the point where you feel like you can assemble a portfolio. Because if you really think about why are we doing all this, I mean, at the end of the day, granted, we love it, but we ultimately want to get a job, right? We all want to do this professionally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sure there's some people wanting to do this just as a hobby, which I completely admire. But I feel that there's a common mindset that everyone here is hungry to build a portfolio, to build their strengths, to become better artists, better designers, and then to really make a living out of this, right? So that's kind of my general take. And the thing about technique versus design, I just want to clarify, is when we're going to school, you know, we learn how to read and write, right? We learn about ABCs, and, you know, we learn how to write them down, things like that. But it's not until after you know how to read and write that you start to write your own stories, that you start to communicate your own ideas. And to me, that is design. The moment you start to communicate that you can communicate your own ideas, that's when you're designing. That's when you're being creative. So Foundation Patreon is really a mixture between, hey, we're going to teach you how to learn and teach you how to read and write, but also we're going to teach you the importance of being a creative thinker.
Cool. And there's quite a clear division or specification. I mean, John teaches design, Matthew teaches digital, and Daniel teaches drawing. How that came about, choosing. And the other question I have is, will we see Daniel teaching design stuff, like he teaches at Brainstorm and the art of design and research and industrial design and stuff? How will you interchange this stuff planning for the future?
Matt or Daniel, you want to answer that one?
Sure, I'll go ahead and I'll put my 2 cents in. I guess so it actually started with all 3 of us working on, you know, separate categories, or actually all of them together. You know, I was helping out John with design, Daniel was helping with design as well, and we decided that it would be good to kind of take our specialties, because I would consider myself more technically based, so I had a better fit for the digital section, while Daniel is probably one of the best drawers I know out there. He's an amazing sketch artist. So it was a really good fit for him there. But going forward, we definitely are going to start to intertwine a little bit more, and John's going to help out with digital, Daniel's going to help out with design, and it's really about the content more than it is, the instructor that is kind of providing the material. And did you have something to say, Daniel?
Well, I was just going to say that it was funny because John and I, we were discussing switching roles, because John wanted to do like a brush pen demo for dynamic sketching, and I actually wanted to do like the SketchUp designing thing that I kind of do at Art of Design at Brainstorm. And we were just talking about it, so I think our next month will be our first test run, and kind of just switching it up just a little bit. Me doing design and then John doing illustration, because John's really good at illustrating too, and he has his own kind of like loose kind of sketch technique. So yeah, we're definitely gonna switch it up and see how you guys like it. Really.
Yeah, and I think we want to kind of tie in all the principles, so that you can kind of see how all of these exercises overlap. Mm-hmm. So Daniel, myself, and Matt, we're planning on doing assignments that are all going to revolve all three muscles, right? Because drawing, designing, and digital, they're three different muscles, right? And to do them all at the same time is like running, lifting weights, and swimming at the same time. It's like, I feel like it can be a hard balance. It's like a triathlon, really.
Yeah.
But we do want to try to introduce that once we get everyone up to speed, and I think that's going to be the next big step for us in this program.
Great. It's gonna be awesome. Can't wait. Do you guys mind answering some questions from the chat?
Absolutely, please.
There's a question from Rodrigo, and I think it would be nice if you could show us, John, the works you prepared, and talk about this answer and how an artist could outstand in the industry, be noticed, considering all the amazing artwork we can easily see out there. In other words, he continues, how can we stand to the goddamn Chinese and Russian?
The Chinese and Russians, man, they're so good. God.
Yeah.
What are they? There's something in their water, right? God damn, they're so good. I know. Every time I go onto ArtStation, I'm like, Dmitry Sorgovkovich. It's like I've never heard of him. Like, oh my God, he's amazing.
Yeah.
Or like some other guy's name, like Young Hei Pao Tan or something. Like, wow, you draw dragons like a mother effer, man. So amazing.
Yeah.
But and here's the thing. Here's the thing that I do want to communicate is that the guys that do that, their technical abilities are amazing, and if you just imagine how much time they're putting in drawing, they're really good at reading and writing, they're very good, they're very articulate. The thing, if you want to stand out between those guys that are really good at reading and writing, is being just creative, and that's the most important thing. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with Sid Mead, right?
Yep.
Amazing, right? And John Berkey, and even some of the other like amazing early what I would consider early conceptual designers. Their drawings and paintings are great, but their ideas are even greater, and that's what made them stand out. Because if you think about art, there's really two major factors. It's illustrating and it's designing at the same time. But illustration is just a tool used to communicate our designs, and design is what's going to be the most important factor. So I would say get your drawings and paintings up to a certain point, and then purely focus on design, purely focus on story, focus on the originality, and how to be creative, you know, how to think outside the box. It's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of the way I would say you can really stand out from that crowd.
There's actually a question I think would lead nice to that, and that's what do you think that makes your design ability enhance most? Which kind of practice? Building a big system of visual elements? I can't understand this part, but what do you think would enhance, like learning form language or improving your research, or what do you think makes this creative side of you pop and start being awesome?
I think I can hand that over to Daniel.
Cool.
Wow. Good question on that one. I feel like it's really kind of a discussion between where you get your information, and that being one part, and then the second part is how you go about as an individual thinking about that information. So number one, you need to get information, and that usually happens with like a really good community. And I don't know, maybe John can kind of talk about this as well, as like, or Matt, like, you know, when you're surrounded by all these creative people and you see what they do, and you have these discussions of, you know, fantasy or, you know, sci-fi or you know, movies and these things, like it's so much, you get so much more by talking about it with people. That's what I'm interested in too. Like the times when I grew the most, I think conceptually, there were people around me so that I can ask them, hey, am I crazy? But what do you think about this? Because this is what I think, but what do you think? And then they tell me something totally new that I've never heard of, like, hey, check this out, Daniel. Hey, have you seen this? Have you seen this like article, or have you seen this new film that no one's ever seen, or have you seen this on National Geographic? Check out this crazy animal. So I think building a community where you're able to grow is like, that's the platform. And you build your house on a strong foundation, a foundation that links to many other outlets. That being a huge part of success, and I actually, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts about this as well, what's the difference between, you know, someone like us where, you know, in some sense we're kind of privileged because we have the internet, right? But there's a lot of parts of the world where they have no internet. They have no information, they have no school, and they have no idea that you can actually make a living doing art, right? So the actual difference is that we have access to information, and if you build a community or you have these areas of life where you're able to get that sort of information, that is, I think, that's the pillar, right? That's the starting point. So,
Right.
Yeah, that's helped me a lot. That's helped me a lot, honestly. Yeah. So
And
that
I'll definitely piggyback off that. I mean, building a community is fantastic because you get to see other people's viewpoint. But going back to if I were to give you a surface answer, and you asked, oh, what are some exercises or things I can do to improve my design? You know, is it form language? Is it doing, you know, studies? All those things are definitely going to help build a visual library. You know, there's not necessarily one thing. And we can tell you like, oh yeah, go read books, travel the world, do this and that, dance, and smoke weed and all this stuff, right? But I think when it comes down to it is definitely um, when you do research, when you think and you brainstorm, try to have a creative discussion with yourself and with other people, and start to write them down, whatever it may be. And then when you write them down, try to draw them out as basic as you can, because that is going to be the core or the most simplistic version of your creative idea, you know? And to express that in a fancy way is then painting it or doing a 3D model. Now, there was something mentioned in regards to like form language, right?
Mhm.
Form language is relatively a new kind of thing. It wasn't something that was taught like 10 years ago. It's something that's kind of been a hybrid of multiple classes that I've personally taken. But it's really about embracing the idea of like thinking outside the box. So here's something in regards to form language for you guys. Is instead of drawing a character that looks like Final Fantasy, what if you drew a character that was inspired by mushrooms, you know? And the character's skin grows just the way a fungi would grow. And his or her weapon is made up of some of those elements. Now already, that idea sounds crazy, but it's very, very creative, because I haven't seen that, right? And to use that as a starting point to kind of discuss, like the way we're discussing right now, it already kind of seeds in or puts an idea for what it could potentially be when we start painting or modeling or sketching. And so, kind of going back to what Daniel was saying, was having these discussions become really great outlets for thinking outside the box, and brainstorming, like just thinking about creative ideas, and that really cultivates design.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of add to that because, so I was talking about that being a two-part thing. So, like on the exterior world, you get your information, right? You have to have a good platform for information to even know about fungi, because some people don't even know that mushrooms exist.
Yeah.
And then the second part is what you do when you're alone, when you're by yourself, or when you're thinking. Um, for me personally, I found it very distracting when I was so busy about. I got really caught up in like success or money or these things that really don't serve creativity. Creativity is really when you're bored out of your mind and you're at home, your natural inclination is to be kind of creative. And that's what I've done. I've kind of scheduled out like 2 days out of the week where it's for my own personal creative time. And that's really helped me out a lot. Now, I don't know if that'll help, the the viewer that asked that question, but instead of trying to go towards success or trying to be this thing, if you sit there and you let your mind kind of run and your imagination run and give yourself time, you'll be really surprised at how creative you'll be. And I think giving yourself that environment is a huge part of kind of being creative. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that.
That's great.
Then I guess if I can pitch in here, one way to branch off that is a question I see multiple times in the chat. Is a Kit Kat game was saying, any idea how to enhance our design thinking? And I know one thing for me personally was a big struggle was just going in with a purpose. And I'd literally have a post-it now just as a reminder that what is the purpose of the image you're trying to create? Are you trying to make an image just for painting's sake, or are you trying to communicate something? And what's the whole reason that you're trying to communicate that? So a lot of that has to do with before you even touch pen to paper or stylus to your tablet, start jotting down just general ideas, coming up with what it is that you want to illustrate, you know, it doesn't even matter how you do it, if it's on paper, if you're kit bashing something together, or if it's all in your mind. Just making sure that you have a solid idea, so that way when you dive into it, you have a purpose for the creation.
Great. One thing I was discussing with the guys from Volta on Thursday was this how to innovate in a world that we are constantly seeing so much art that comes from the same source. And I think it's something that there's a question here that it's saying almost the same. How can we dodge this amount of stuff to come to get fresh ideas, to come up with innovative stuff? Like Ghibli Studio is completely different from what Hollywood is putting out, and how Hollywood can innovate, and how I don't know if it can do it that much because of commercial stuff, but how can we get this stuff out of our heads and to go on new direction, go back to nature? What would you guys suggest?
Nature's a big one. I love going out into nature and just observing and being present with nature, and it's just so weird. Like, nature has such weird ways of doing things if you really pay attention. And the only way to really pay attention is you got to kind of stop, like, thinking about, like, how can I use this to make my art better? Like, you have to become present to just look at what's in front of you and just be purely fascinated by that. And then when you go home, you're going to be inspired by that. Nature's a good one.
Right.
I also like to read a lot of about a lot of interesting things that are happening in the world, like, you know, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and you know, micro microsciences. They're very interesting as well. So just kind of like getting interested in things genuinely, and getting interested in things that are not a part of the industry. Like, for instance, like, if you guys are just looking at only concept art and more concept art, like, it's naturally you're not gonna be inspired by outside factors, so it's going to be a regurgitation of the same idea over and over again. It's just going to be better. It might look better, or you might put a different brush technique to it, but it's generally kind of the same kind of thing. So, you know, what I tried to do in my design is, for instance, like when I was doing industrial design a lot, I would look at architecture, or I would look at totally different fields.
Mm-hmm.
To get influenced by, and I feel like that's really interesting. So I highly encourage that. Get out to the world, go ask questions, and bring that back into the field in which you're studying, and you're going to enrich that field.
I would love to piggyback off that because, I mean, I always look up to Craig Mullins, you know, and like when I see his stuff, I'm like, how did he paint that? That's insane. And I'm reading some of the comments here, and one of the viewers asked, like, oh, should we not be looking at ArtStation? You know, should we completely stop? I want to kind of play devil's advocate and say, you know what? No, look at it. Look at those artists, man. You know, study the shit out of it. But what are they looking at, right? How are they coming up with the cool, badass stuff? Because they're always ahead. You're always looking at them, but they're looking at something else. So I'm curious to know, you know, if you started looking at the things that they're looking at, what could you come up with? You know, how creative do you think you can get? Because I was the same way. You know, like I was always looking at Craig Mullins' work and Jamie Jones, right? Those guys are like my favorite painters. And I'm just thinking, how do they, what? How do they do that? I'm just gonna copy what they're doing. Shit, because I don't know how they did that. But I started asking, well, I wonder what they're looking at. And I was talking with a student of mine, and he's very knowledgeable and very educated with American artists, and he knows like his history of art. And he was like, oh yeah, these artists, they're actually looking at N.C. Wyeth. They're looking at you know, how you know, yeah, Leyendecker and Sargent and Payne, all these guys that I had never heard about. I was like, what? Who are these guys? And they're guys that were, you know, generations way beyond before us that were doing amazing artwork. So I went home that day and I searched them up. I searched up Sargent, and I swear to you, I saw paintings that literally looked like Craig Mullins' work, but they were just done traditionally.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, holy shit, dude! I like unlocked the key to their secrets. They're looking at artists that died, right? Right. So that was the start of it, and then from there you start thinking, well, what did those artists look at? You know, because there's always, it doesn't always end with them, or it doesn't always start with them. It must have come from something. And that's the fascination, and that's like going off of what Daniel was saying, is like go outside, look at nature, and do all these things. But if you're looking at ArtStation and you're looking at one particular artist, look at their work, analyze it, try to really, really get into their mind, like, and study their brushstrokes or whatnot. But then beyond that, try thinking about, I wonder what the hell they're looking at. I'm very curious to know what inspired them to make that image, and why does it appeal to me? And I think that's kind of where we start to get somewhere interesting. What do you think, Matt?
I'm thinking, in addition to that, you know, definitely researching and looking up old artists. But another way to get inspiration ideas is the output of our art is usually for a film, a video game, you know, theme park. So you can even take sources directly from that. You know, take one of your favorite video games or favorite films and think, how can I make this better? Or what if I gave this a twist? What if it's now, you know, Final Fantasy inspired by Egyptian theme, and all of a sudden now you give yourself additional inspiration for having a purpose of what you're trying to design, as well as now becoming a critical thinker on how can I create this environment, but do it with my own story in mind or my own idea in mind.
Right. And how do you guys keep up studying your fundamentals, and what are you guys looking to learn nowadays? I've seen John posting some stuff, exploring Theo Prin's stuff and old background painters from Disney, and I don't remember
Alberto
his name.
Alberto Mielgo
Alberto Mielgo
is another one. The old background designer is Ivan Earl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are you doing that for? It's about what you said earlier, but how does that relate to your work and your practice of fundamentals and what you are learning now?
Well, the stuff that you're seeing on Facebook is actually for a class that I teach at Brainstorm.
Oh yeah.
But
Experimental painting.
the core of like what we're doing and why it's helpful is it's a pure technique class, right? But then it's like thinking about how, like, what kind of tools did they use first, right? So the first thing is, what kind of brushes do you think they use? And then it goes to, well, okay, we got the brushes down. What kind of colors do they use? Oh, they always use these tones. That's interesting. And then it goes all the way to like, oh, what kind of compositions do they usually explore? And if you look at all three of those different artists, they all have different styles in how they showcase composition, right? and their compositions, some are very long lensy. It's very stacked. Alberto Mielgo, I find to be one of the most dynamic artists. If you guys haven't heard of them, I'll go ahead and type that in the chat. He's great. Alberto Mielgo, he's fantastic because he has such a range in creating story and just dynamism. There's a lot of gesture and movement in his work. It's almost very comic book like. And the way he paints, he only paints with 100% brush, no opacity, nothing, no flow. It's just 100% everything. And it has. I think it forces him to think about the shapes. It forces him to think about the gestures, but most importantly, it forces him to think about the image and how he really tries to communicate the story and the image with these limited techniques. And that's what I learned, at least personally for me. You know, to him it might not be that, I don't know, but I mean I found it to be such an interesting experience trying to copy and study his work. And Theo Prinz is such an amazing artist, and I just started studying his work this week, and he's all about patterns, you know, patterns and simultaneous contrast. And if you look at his work, if you guys are listening, definitely check out Theo Prinz. He typically plays with light and dark shadow shapes, and it makes for such a provocative image and a way to kind of create mood. And I learned he balances out his image using light and dark and patterns. And that's kind of what I discovered so far. And it's still skimming the surface. I still feel like there's a lot more, but that's kind of what I learned from studying these guys.
Great.
And I guess
just doing some advertisement here. There's going to be a tutorial on John's Patreon next month about this stuff.
Yes.
I think we should mention. And sorry, Matt.
No, it's totally cool. I was just going to say, I guess to chime in on that, one thing I found very, very helpful is be sure to keep a sketchbook on you. I mean, like, also keep a sketchbook that you don't plan on showing people, so you have this mental understanding that this is only for you to study. You're outside, you know, waiting to get your tires changed or whatnot. You're just drawing. You're going out and you're painting what you see from life, and just being able to keep it loose and just focusing on what you're seeing, how you can interpret it, and how you can use that in the future is really going to help you.
That's a good one, Matt. I always tell my students, keep a sketchbook. That's it. You know, you see, like most people who are highly efficient, productive people always write stuff down. You don't always have to have it on you, but there's some form of way of like recording something. Like whether you put it in your phone or something, just record it in some way. So, yeah.
Great.
Keep on going with that.
We are approaching the 1 hour mark, so I think it would be good to talk about first what's coming up next month on Foundation Patreon, so we can make a little ad moment, and later maybe some final thoughts and anything else you guys want to say.
Sure.
Yeah. So what's coming up?
I guess I can start off with the Patreon stuff. As we mentioned, we are going to switch things up just a little bit. You know, we definitely want to, you know, have, you know, crossover disciplines with Matt painting, you know, one of Daniel's designs and me illustrating one of Daniel's designs. You know, and we're gonna try to mix it up, but also kind of have it so that it's kind of practiced and packaged together, so that there's kind of like a one big goal at the end. But we would love to hear, you know, from you guys, the community, what you guys would like to see, because we're really just kind of going off of what you guys want to learn, and we want to try to break it down and simplify it and make it digestible for you guys as best as we can. So, did you want to have any other input, Matt, Daniel?
I think I think we brought this up before, but definitely I personally, I kind of wanted to share the process when I was for props. So again, like prop designing is probably one of the easier ways that you guys can get into the industry. When you guys are, when these companies are filling out their environments, there's a lot of props to design. So even for freelancing, remember, John, there's a lot of like props that we needed to design. So that's a great way to learn. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So I think we focusing on props and getting that solid, and figuring out like how do we get that final finish, that final that quality, that level in which companies will be like, you know what, we want to hire you, or are you available for freelance? And that's what we're going to kind of focus on this next I don't know, maybe month or two, and that's what I have planned. Matt, do you have anything planned on the digital side?
Yeah, so for digital, soon we're gonna hop back into black and white, and we're gonna start focusing now on not only doing, studies to learn lighting, but how to start inventing your own lighting in, say like in a small room environment. How many different ways can that room be lit? And we're just gonna keep it simple, just black and white and basic understanding on learning how light would react within the environment.
Great. That's great. Can't wait. Once again. One thing I find really cool, and that I liked about some of John's tutorials was the research and naming things to go after. I think this process of starting a design and starting all your research and all the elements that you will combine, and how do you put them together to get something interesting, it's something that is really amazing to see you guys do.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe something like that would be great to see again on foreign language too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Cool to see. But that's my take. I don't know what the community would say. I can do a thread on the events page so people can say some stuff they would like to see in the future.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Great.
That'd be really cool.
Yeah. And any final thoughts? Anything you guys want to chat about, or just our goodbyes? Yeah. I could stay all the time in the world talking to you guys, but I know you have stuff to do.
Why don't we go ahead and maybe answer a couple questions? Seems like there's a few questions here.
I've been looking to some of them. There was one from Rodrigo again, talking about the income as a concept artist and it being fair, or how much companies value artists nowadays.
Okay.
I think Matthew kind of answered that, but if you could give your take on that.
Yeah.
His question was, how do you guys see the average income for a concept artist? Fair? Companies should value artists a bit more, considering the more and more skills, tools they've got to learn.
Yeah, that's always a tricky one, right? I know the starting income for a concept artist, it ranges anywhere from $45,000 to about $65,000, and this is U.S.
A year, yeah.
A year.
Here in Brazil, we say the monthly income, so it's good to make it clear that
yeah. The monthly income on that would probably be, I don't know, maybe
Around
3,
4K.
4,000, 4,000.
Yeah, something around that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's pretty good. You know, I mean, it's definitely really good. But depending on the company, if it's smaller, then the budget's going to be smaller. If the company's bigger, then it's going to be bigger. But going to the core of the core of the question, you said, how do we kind of make sure that you're being valued? Um, I think it's the artist's responsibility to bring value, because companies, not to point fingers at anyone, but companies, they kind of just don't care. You know, they're a big machine, and
Yeah.
you're just a part of that machine, right? But you got to make yourself a core part.
Cool. Cool. I have one question. I
Yeah.
think that would be nice to talk about. We're talking about fundamentals, and the natural progression of a concept artist in the film industry or the video game industry is to become a production designer or an art director or something like that. How do you think this core fundamentals and this solid foundation will translate throughout your career, and what are the core knowledge needed to get into this kind of positions and stuff? I
For
don't know
being
if it's a good question.
for being a production designer,
Yeah.
well, in regards to, you know, I think I can answer that just because I work in film. But in regards to like what kind of foundations to focus on to really build yourself up to become a production designer is your communication and your design ability. I think those are the key things,
Cool.
because the end result isn't going to be an amazing painting. The end result is going to be an amazing movie, right? Has to be an amazing set that you design so that the actors and actresses can act on top of it and create this world, this kind of this fictional place, right? Um, and I think that's one of the most important things that production designers tend to grasp or tend to really hold close to them. Um, Now, production designers, the term is a little different, but they're mainly in charge of building the sets and basically making the director's vision come to life, and that's kind of the key role. The concept artists that work with the production designer basically help with the vision to kind of help build that up so that it's fully realized and that it can be budgeted out and that it can be built. And so, and that's all done through design.
Cool. There's a question here. Have you guys given thought to making a poll so patrons vote on future content?
Yeah, I think.
That would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I think me and Matt talked about that. Oh, I'll let Matt answer that one.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good suggestion. We've done a survey in the past in order to generate additional ideas, and then what we did at the time is we collected all the results and we discussed together what would be the best presentation method to kind of unify all these suggestions, and that way they do build up in a certain order and structure, so it's not just random tutorials, like here's color, here is designing a mech. Like we really want to structure everything so that way people that come in can take part 1, 2, and 3 and really just
Yeah.
expand that knowledge.
Yeah, one of the hard parts is, and it's hard for guys that are starting out is, oh, I want to learn about color theory. That is so hard to teach in one video. Oh my God,
Oh,
you know? Or like designing. I want to learn how to design, you know? Well, I'm just gonna give you guys some perspective. It took me and Daniel to go to a 4-year college to understand the basics of design. You know, it took 4 years, right? So we're trying our best to condense that down to the community in a matter of like 3, 4 videos at most, and that's like barely scratching the surface, right? So A lot of the stuff that is asked for, Matt, myself, and Daniel, we're trying our best to dissect it down, to simplify it, and to make it the most presentable, for the most bang for your buck. But it is a little challenging for us to basically get all that in one video. So, which is why Matt was suggesting or saying before, we have to structure it and kind of lead up to it and pace it out.
Yep, cool. Something I was thinking about is that, as Daniel said in the beginning, content is out there and Foundation Patreon is part of it. And communities are a big part of learning. And one thing that I've found through my research and stuff is that most of the big schools, such as Art Center, FZD, and Brainstorm, CDA, they have one aspect that is not found in a lot of other schools, that is to make a presentation of your work, the work you did over the weekend or homework and stuff. And I think that's a big part of the learning experience too, to learn how to talk about your work and how to discuss it and how to defend it if needed, in a constructive way and not on a closed way or something like that. And I'd like personally to know your opinion on that and how important was that, and if there is any mechanism that we could try and replicate this stuff over at Foundation Patreon or something like that. I don't know if the blogs are like that. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think. Well, the way we run our presentations at Brainstorm is very similar to the way we run it at the way we learned it at Art Center, and it's standing in front of your peers. It's to be able to not only defend it, but to be able to stand by it and to communicate, to talk about your ideas, to start a conversation. And I find that to be one of the most helpful skills to learn, is not to just be someone who's behind the desk and, oh, here's my artwork, but someone who can actually talk about it and say, yeah, this is what I was thinking, this is the world that I was building, and this is how it's going to drive the story. And then to receive the critiques from your peers is also another important skill, because that is feedback. That's all about being able to take other bits of information that's given to you, and being able to take suggestions, being able to make changes, being able to think outside the box, and also to be not so closed-minded, and to be a professional. That's what it takes, and those are some of the things that we really we really try to implement and adopt into the program at Brainstorm. But as far as Patreon goes, we have a platform for doing feedback. Mm-hmm. It would be awesome, and I would have to talk to Matt and Daniel about how to do this, but feedback is even more important or more effective when it's coming from your fellow classmate and not only from an instructor. Because one of the things that we learned is you actually learn more from your classmate than you do from your own instructors. So, I don't know, what do you guys think, Matt, Daniel?
I go through this every week, when I teach, and it's a constant conversation of what I find with students is when you finally talk about your work, you're running through the ideas in your head in real time with your peers, with people in front of you, and you have to really understand your work in order to talk about it. And a lot of times you don't understand your work. That's what I find with kind of student level work, is that you don't really think about what am I doing here? What am I saying? What am I communicating? And it's such an important like thing to do to just like go through that. Just go through it once or twice before you actually submit your work. So, I think a lot of people that are in like professional settings, like already in like a video studio or like a film studio, you've kind of gone through that personal experience of like, hey guys, this is my work. I'm thinking that the tank is supposed to go there and it's supposed to shoot over here, and you know and there's some battle damage here because the enemy shot us. But a lot of times with like student work, you're just like doing it. You don't really organize your thoughts. And so what the difference between like design and fine art is that design has to convey a certain amount of